All right, everyone. Welcome for episode 7 of the Google for Education paid workspace customer series. Super excited to have you back today, training on another exciting topic, Google Workspace Analytics, understanding usage, engagement, and security. We're back again, as I mentioned, for episode 7 here, sometimes referred to as the Mike and Jeff show, Jeff and Mike show. I'm Mike Patterson, Workspace for Education Strategy Lead in North America, and joined by my good friend, Jeff.
Hey, everyone. I'm a Solutions Engineer for Google for Education, so work with schools around the globe, especially here in North America with Workspace for Education.
And can't go any further without mentioning the wizard behind the curtain, Devin Regis, who's helping us run everything on the back end. So as we head into my favorite slide and yours, the housekeeping slide, let's talk about some things you can get access to right now and hopefully some stuff moving forward. So for those of you that have joined us before, we're recording this session now. We're going to be posting it to our website at the conclusion of today's training. You will be able to access today's deck and content right now if you'd like to follow along using that link in the top right-hand corner. You can also head to that second link, which is our site, where you can register for all the remaining sessions. As I mentioned a couple times, we're already into episode 7 of this 10-part series. Had a lot of great content so far, and recognize that, especially in this back-to-school time frame, a lot of you can't join us live. Please register so you can get access to those great recordings of the sessions we've already done.
All right. So as always, we like to share a checklist to go along with our session. And today is no exception. So we put together a Workspace Analytics checklist. Again, this is really just a foundation for everything we're discussing today. So it has links to many different Help Center articles. A few things we'll mention today very briefly, a few things we won't have time for. Really kind of giving you a foundation into getting started with things like reporting. And then it also has links to some of the things that we're going to talk about today within the Workspace paid edition. So the checklist is available to you now. Please do take a look at it, especially after today's session, and feel free to review all of the resources that are within the checklist.
So that checklist and more, thanks to Devin's great work, is going to be available on the event site. We'll also have some links at the end of this deck. Please continue to take advantage of those resources. If you have questions live, for those of you that are with us, Devin is moderating our comments thread as well. So thank you in advance for the questions. I'm always a fan of friendly competition. We had a really lively group with lots of questions last week when we discussed Windows 10 management. Would love to see the bar raised with this group on a really important topic for EDU. Analytics and insights, big data, if you will, has been a topic of conversation in EDU for the past 20 years, it seems like. Constantly looking for ways to derive data and reporting and have it mean something, have it impact decisions that you're making, whether it comes to instructions of your students, security-related decisions, you name it. All the challenges you're facing, there should be data there to help support some of those decisions that you're making. So Jeff's going to do what he does best and show some demos today of how you get this reporting up and running. Highly recommend, if you don't already have the admin console as your pinned tab number 1 on your Chrome browser, go ahead and log in and follow along with Jeff today. We're going to spend some time looking particularly at the reporting and audit log functionality that's available to you in the admin console, exploring the ways you can use it to identify security risks and much more. We'll spend a little bit of time with talking about what's coming soon, which we know a lot of folks are excited about with classroom audit logs. And then last but definitely not least, using BigQuery, our fantastic Google Cloud product related to exporting reporting, not only across Gmail, but also to get some ideas of how apps are being used across your entire domain. So we'll start with the coming soon piece to get you excited. Hopefully, Jeff, jump forward one more slide there. There we go, with classroom audit logs. So when a security event occurs, the identification of the who, what, where, and when has been really important for a lot of our end users, particularly when it comes to classroom, and bringing that visibility to you. For instance, a common scenario we heard a lot about is a student or someone removing a student from Google Classroom. And so identifying, when that occurred, who archived a specific class on a specific date, this is going to give you another time-saving mechanism that we know is really important to you, saving you time, as we always try to do with some of the automations that we're bringing. All right, so with that teaser of coming soon, let's jump back one slide. And I'm going to spend the next couple slides here just high level of some of the reporting you already have access to. So for those of you that have ever gone into the admin console, you've gone into the reporting, you've already seen a lot of the different types of things that you can pull information on. Some things around security risks, configuration problems, even tracking user activity are just a few things that you can do. You can pull highlight reports across your organization. You can also run apps reports across Gmail, Drive, and so on. And as you can see, the list goes on. The additional functionality that you're getting with some of this reporting is allowing you to go even more granular, particularly in the user report space and the really in-depth reporting that comes from our audit logs. So that's going to be one of the places you'll spend time with Jeff on. And then if we jump a couple slides ahead here, the next place we're going to be looking at is exporting your Gmail logs for analysis in BigQuery. And also the ability to export into other third-party platforms and tools that you may have access to in your learning community. So we want to give you the ability to go a little bit deeper and do it as fast as computer possible with the function and processing power of BigQuery. So you can look and use custom queries. You can set your data retention policies, and you can also create custom reporting and dashboards. One of probably my favorite parts of this talk track today is going to be opening some eyes, both those attending live and who will attend in virtually, about our free data visualization tool called Google Data Studio. And this allows you to build custom templates that are digestible by just about any audience member, students, staff, parents, school district leadership, you name it. We wanted to make that as easy for you as possible. So that's, again, one of the other places. And then we'll talk about the last topic before I stop delaying you from Jeff any longer. And that is getting audit logs and usage data, also powered by BigQuery. So in this particular space, we often get the question of, I'd really love to know how folks in our learning community are using Drive, are using docs and sheets and slides. And so finding ways to pull out reporting on things like number of docs created, number of slides shared, and so on is just really scraping the surface of some of the reporting that you can pull out via the audit logs and that usage data, allowing you to go as granular as individuals and zoom out as high level as your entire organization, allowing you to build reports, piping that data out into Data Studio. The possibilities really are endless. We've got a lot of great partners that have built out some templates that you can take advantage of. There's a lot of great stuff out in admin communities already. But this is really about raising awareness that you have access to this and you should be giving it a try and tapping into the knowledge base out there of folks that have already taken advantage of this great high-powered functionality and reporting. So with all of that setting the stage that I could possibly do, I'll turn it over to Jeff for the remainder of today, and he's going to walk you through how to take advantage of each of these steps. As mentioned, the very end of this deck, there's some links directly to step-by-step processes on how to do this. Our fantastic 30 Ways deck is another great place to go for some scenarios that you can tap into. But enough is enough. Over to you, my friend.
Thanks so much, Mike. And one thing that, here we go. We wanted to just mention before we get into some of the demos of all of these things is, and Mike's mentioned this a bit, is kind of what can you do with your BigQuery data, right? It's great to export it to BigQuery, but what do you do then, right? What's possible? And so there are kind of three things that we're going to talk about today. The first is you can actually run SQL queries directly on that data. And so if you're familiar with SQL, if If you want to learn SQL, we even have some sample SQL queries that can get you started and get you up and running pretty quickly. The second thing you can do is connect your BigQuery data to Google Sheets. It's very easy. I'll show you how to do it. Just a couple of clicks. And once it's connected, you can then use the magic of Google Sheets and everything you're familiar with within Sheets to analyze that data. So you can use formulas. You can create, of course, charts and graphs. You can use all of the magic of the Sheets analysis tools as well to analyze your data. And then finally, as Mike mentioned, you can bring your data over into Google Data Studio, and we'll talk a little bit about that today and what that looks like. So with that, let's jump in to our favorite place, the Google Workspace Admin Console. So hopefully you are all very familiar with this section of the Admin Console, your reporting section. Again, this is what Mike talked about first. And this is where you can see things like highlights across your organization. You can see all of your specific reports. So whether that's apps reports, things like Gmail reports, Drive, Voice, etc. You could look at user reports to look at accounts, apps usage, and security. You can look at device reports if you're managing Chromebooks, if you're managing mobile devices. And then, of course, you can look at your audit logs, right? So everything from your admin audit log, everything that's happening in the admin console, to calendar, Drive, etc. And coming soon, hopefully, possibly, maybe even launching this week, is the classroom audit log. And as Mike mentioned, this will be coming to all educational domains. You'll be able to see things like who added a student to a class, who removed them. You'll be able to see when classes were created and archived. You'll actually be able to see some activity within the classes themselves. So again, this is coming soon, imminently, we hope, and there'll be an announcement that goes out, a blog post, and some Help Center articles associated with this, so you can get started right away. So with that, let's now talk about the advanced features that you have with Google Workspace for Education Standard and with Plus, and namely the export to BigQuery and then what we can do with it after that. So first things first, and there are some resources in the checklist as well as at the end of this presentation that you can use. We want to set up our BigQuery export. So this doesn't happen automatically, but once you set it up, it then runs automatically. So it's a one-time setup, and then everything runs for you. So there are two places you're going to want to go to set up this export. One place for your reporting, and then one place for your Gmail log specifically. For the reporting, you can go into the admin console. Under reporting, you should see this link for BigQuery export. And if you don't see this, do make sure that you have a Plus or Standard license assigned to your user account. On this page, obviously, you can see it's pretty basic. There's not much we have to do here. You can click Edit to edit this. And then essentially, you're going to add your BigQuery project ID. Now, what if you don't have a project ID? Not a problem. It's actually very, very easy to set this up. So within the Cloud Console, which is console.cloud.google.com, you should have access to this using your organization's account as long as you have this service turned on for your organization, or at least for your OU or group or your individual users. This is under additional services. And anything that we do in here, we can also set permissions, right? So even if you turn on Google Cloud Platform, Google Cloud Console for a specific set of users, you don't obviously have to give access to your BigQuery data, right, to all of those users. You can determine who should get access and who shouldn't. But within here, it's actually very, very easy to create a project. There are some steps that you can take here. If we click at the very top, we get this new project. We enter a little bit of information, and then from there, it creates the project for us.
Hey, Jeff.
Go ahead, Mike.
Do you mind real quick zooming in a little bit? There's a lot of good language in here, especially in the scripting level, that we got some folks that would love to see.
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Yeah. Excellent. Yep. So as I mentioned, if you kind of click here on the top, you can see new project. It will, I've got unsaved works, so I won't leave it right now, but it'll open up a screen. It'll allow you to enter a few details and create that project ID. From there, back in this screen, you can select your project. And that way we know which project you want us to put your exported data in. You can specify a name for the data set within the project. You can have multiple data sets. So for example, we might have a reports data set for our reporting. We then might have a Gmail data set within that same project for our Gmail exports. So you can name those data sets however you'd like. You can restrict the data set to a specific geographic location, and then you'd click Save. From there, the export will start. Now, I will say, if you're setting this up for the first time, it does take a couple of days for that initial export to happen. We've seen maybe anywhere from 2 to 4 days or so for that export to get started. If it's taking longer than that, please do submit a support ticket and let us know. Once this is set up, as I mentioned, it's going to automatically export the data for you on a regular basis. It should be just about every 24 hours. It doesn't always happen exactly on that schedule, but you should see data coming in daily. Now, it won't export any data from the past. So for example, if we were exporting Gmail logs, it's only going to export logs essentially from when you start the export on forward. It's not retroactive. So once we have it set up here, as I mentioned, it'll then start the export. If we want to export Gmail logs, we have a different place for that. If we go in the admin console under Apps and then Google Workspace under Gmail, and then under our Gmail settings, we go into the Setup section. You can see down here, email logs in BigQuery. It's currently on. I can click this, enable it, and very similarly to the last screen, you're going to select the BigQuery project that you want to use. You specify the name for the data set. Again, our other data set was called reports, right? This one, Gmail logs data. And then you click Save, and it will start to export those logs. Now, let's just talk for a second about kind of why we would want to do this, right? So obviously, as we're talking about today, once the data is in BigQuery, you can analyze the data. And that's a great reason to export it. And there's a lot that you can do, and we'll look at some of that today. Another reason is just simply for retention. So you may know that we have, we retain log data for you within the admin console for a certain period of time. For Gmail logs, for example, we retain 30 days of data. For your admin reports, things like your activity, your usage, your audit logs, for the most part, those are retained for 6 months. If, let's say, you want to start retaining that data for a longer period of time, if you wanted to retain your Gmail log data for 6 months, if you wanted to retain your reporting data for a year, one way that you can do that is to export it to BigQuery. Because once it's in BigQuery, you can determine how long you keep that data. If you want, you can keep the data indefinitely. You can also set up basically retention rules, similarly to Vault, where you can say, only keep this data for a certain number of days and then delete it. So all of that is up to you, but it gives you the potential to retain that data for as long as you want. So let's talk about some of the things that you can do once the data is in BigQuery. So you can see here, as I mentioned, you can write SQL queries to query the data directly. And of course, here I'm within the Google Cloud Platform console. I can run these SQL queries right in here. There are other ways to do this. There are third-party applications that connect to BigQuery, command line applications. There's an API. There's a number of ways that you can run these queries if you're familiar with SQL. And as I mentioned, we actually have a Help Center article with some examples that's linked in the checklist that we mentioned earlier. And so I just wanted to show you briefly kind of what this looks like in the data that we get back. Here we are in our demo domain. We have some fake data that we're using. And I just ran a few queries. So the first thing that I wanted to look at was in Google Calendar, the number of one-day active users. So essentially, how many of my users are active within a single day? And you can see here that we've pulled back data for a few days, and we can see the number of active users right here in the table. I then did another query, and in this case, I want to look at all of my Google Drive files and how they are shared. And so you can see that we've got many, many files that are private. We've got a lot that are actually shared externally, some public on the web, so on and so forth. Just giving me a kind of a quick indication of how my users are sharing their Drive files. And then finally, I ran a report on the number of Meet calls in Google Meet and the total number of call minutes. And you can see here, this is actually data from June. We have, number of calls, total call minutes. So again, you can do almost anything here using SQL. You can specify exactly the type of data that you want to see. Now, what if you want to visualize this data, or maybe you're not familiar with SQL? What can you do then? So that's where we get to Google Sheets. And we have here an example of a Google Sheet that we've connected to that BigQuery data. And we've started to run some analysis just to kind of show you what's possible. So the first thing that we did was we pulled in all of our activity logs. And there's actually 13 million rows in here. So Sheets is able to handle quite a bit of data. From there, we ran a specific query, again, using Sheets. This was all done in Sheets, to basically show how users are sharing their Drive files. And so we have a lot of data here kind of showing us that breakdown. And then finally, of course, using the Sheets visualization capabilities, we created a chart to look at all of this data and see how files are being shared across the organization, very similarly to the query that I ran within BigQuery directly. And as we can see here, we've got some shared externally, some public in the domain, many public on the web, private shared externally, people with the link, etc. So there's a lot that you can do once the data is within Sheets to run these analyses and create these visualizations. It's very, very easy to get started with connected Sheets. Here, I've just created a brand new spreadsheet. If I go to the data menu and I go down to data connectors, connect to BigQuery, I'll get this data connection. I can then search my BigQuery project to find the specific BigQuery project that we created to house all of this data. In this case here, we have it here. And then from here, I can choose the data set that I want to connect. For example, I might want to connect reports, right? If we were looking at Drive data. And then from there, I might want to look at the table activity. I then press connect, and it's going to run through this connection. And then once that data is connected, from there, here we go, success. It shows me the number of rows. It shows me the number of columns. There's even a video tutorial here that I can watch. I now have all of this data here you can see. And then from there, I can do whatever I want, right? Using all of the magic and the functionality of Google Sheets. Now, the last thing we want to show you is Google Data Studio. And so what is Data Studio? So Data Studio is a free visualization tool, and it can connect to hundreds of different data sources. You can connect it, of course, to BigQuery. You can also connect it to third-party applications. You may have other applications that you're using today that are producing data. It is likely that we already have a connector available for you in Data Studio where you can connect that data and then create visualizations. And the idea here is it connects to that data source, and then from there you can build custom charts custom graphs. You can create filters. You could create a date filter so folks can select different dates, filter down the data in different ways. And then, of course, once you have this data connected and you're building your visualizations, you can actually share with others. And so I could share a Data Studio project with Mike, and he and I could actually work on it together just like we can with a docs, sheets, or slides file. And then from there, we could actually share it out with all of our stakeholders. So if we wanted to, let's say, share a view-only version with our colleague Devin, so she could take a look at it but not edit it, we could do that. So there are a number of different sharing permissions that are available very, very similarly to Drive files. We just wanted to show you a few quick examples of what's possible with Data Studio. And really, these are very basic examples. In this case, we created a Data Studio template just to show some basic information based on our reporting logs. So as you can see here, we have, and I'll zoom in just a little bit more, you can see our daily active users across the different Workspace apps. You can see the number of security keys that we have enrolled in our domain, the number of third-party applications that are authorized via OAuth, the number of files created over the last day. We have a breakdown by user, number of logins, 1 day and 30-day logins. We have files created in doc sheets and slides, two-step verification, and classroom posts. And up here, we've put in a date filter so I can select a date range and view the data. Again, this is very basic and really only represents a subset of what's available to you in the data. But you can see you can create this however you want. You can customize this, this template, this visualization to suit your needs specifically. You can create different versions for different folks. If you wanted to create a version for every school within your district, you could do that. So the sky is really the limit when it comes to Data Studio. Wanted to show you quickly kind of an example of Gmail log reports. We're missing some data here. That's on us, but you can see here we put together just a very basic visualization on spam count and domains. And so just some basic metrics. You could look at things like phishing volume or spoofing volume. You could look at just the number of emails that are being sent and received. Again, whatever is in those Gmail logs, which is all of your metadata, you can view. And of course, in BigQuery, as I mentioned, you can start retaining that data so that a year from now, you could look back at a year's worth of data. And as we mentioned, we also are bringing classroom audit logs to reporting and to the BigQuery export. We're actually going to give you as well a Data Studio template that you can copy and then use to visualize classroom audit log data. So when this launches, again, hopefully very, very soon, you will have a template that's available to you. You can copy it, you can connect it directly to your BigQuery data, and then it will start populating. And there'll be very little you actually have to do to create something like this. And so we just wanted to show you a little bit about what's possible here. So for example, I can see active teachers and students. I can see assignment activity here. Down here, I can see timeline of all classroom activity, assignments posted, classroom activity, active classes. And this is just the overview. And of course, I can filter here by different events. I can select the date range as well. I can also look at some of these tabs. So for example, we have a template for teachers where I can look at things like teacher activity and how that breaks down across my teachers. I can look at student activity as well, and assignments turned in, late submissions, etc. And I can look at classes, looking at course activity, classes created, deleted, archived. Again, the sky is really the limit. There's a lot of data here that's possible for you. And this very specifically is a feature that many, many schools have been requesting. With that, I know we are almost out of time. There's so much that we can't cover today. But we're going to go back to the deck and wrap things up. And of course, if you have any questions, we'd love to answer those as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Mike to talk about our resources.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks for doing the best you could to cram in all that great content. Hopefully, those of you following along from wherever you're logging in today, either live or watching the recording, it's got you excited about the possibilities, particularly some of those Data Studio templates. So hope you found some value there. As mentioned earlier, and just one last time, this is a great slide to take you directly to some steps on how to do a variety of these activities that Jeff already mentioned today. Devin dropped some links in the chat thread as well for you to head to those 30 Ways deck. So please take advantage of these resources, bookmark them in your Chrome browser so that you'll be able to come back to them afterwards. That's it, friends, for episode 7. Please come back to us later this week, excuse me, for our episode on Thursday, when we're going to be talking and shifting gears a little bit on talking about the advanced Meet features and workflows that are going to allow you to better manage whatever learning environment you're coming back to, hybrid, in-person, or fully virtual. We want to share some different tools and functionalities that you can use to make sure that our kids and our teachers are equipped to be successful this school year and beyond. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.